So Canon are releasing a new lens into the RF ecosystem. It's this one, the RF 10 to 20mm f4 L lens. And as you can see, this is actually a relatively kind of compact, pretty lightweight ultra-wide zoom lens in that L series, which means you can expect a certain level of optical quality, design and build quality as well. It fits really well on the front of something like the R5, which is what I've been using it with for the last couple of days, going out shooting landscape stuff, shooting a little bit of interior stuff. 10 to 20mm is actually incredibly versatile. There's all kinds of stuff that you can shoot at that kind of focal range. And that really does allow you to capture, obviously, like I say, landscape, architecture, cityscape, interior stuff is going to be really good with a lens like this. There's a lot of stuff that professionals are going to be able to use this for, a lot of different use cases, and of course, video as well. It's going to be great for different kinds of video stuff, whether you are filming yourself, whether you're doing establishing shots, tracking shots. There's a lot to like about this lens in a lot of different kind of genres. A lot of versatility is what I'm saying. A lot of versatility. Now, we're going to talk about the image quality, we're going to talk about the autofocus, image stabilization as well. Very exciting. And then, of course, the build and the design of the lens itself. Let's start off with image quality. It's the most important thing when it comes to any lens. Now, I should start by saying this is a beta sample of the lens, so not a final full production sample. So we're going to talk about stuff that I really loved, and there's a lot of that. We're going to talk about a couple of things that I didn't like as much, but it is possible that some of those issues will actually be worked out in a full production sample of the lens. So it is worth bearing that in mind, worth taking everything with just a little bit of a pinch of salt. Overall though, it has to be said the image quality here is outstanding. The sharpness is incredible. I mean, the images look fantastic. It's sharp. Obviously in the center, you probably expect that, but towards the edges as well, which on a very wide angle lens like this is fantastic news. It looks so good. This also has something called advanced rectilinear optical design, which essentially is a bit of a mouthful, but it basically means that this is designed to keep lines and angles straight, even out towards the edges. And what that means is you are not experiencing lots of horrible distortion, which is changing the image up and making it not look very good at all. I didn't experience any issues with distortion really at all while using this lens, which is incredible considering just how wide it can go. One thing I did notice with the image quality, which was a little bit of a problem, was the vignetting. It's quite intense, especially at 10mm. Now you zoom in a little bit and it really does go away to a large degree. In fact, if you zoom in even to just 12mm, it becomes much more easy to deal with, and especially in post when you come to edit those photos, it's much easier to cope with it and much easier to make some adjustments in Lightroom, let's say, to fix it. But at 10mm, which I'll show you on screen right now, 10mm and then 20mm, the vignetting can be quite intense. Something to be aware of. Like I say, it is a beta sample. It's possible that will be ironed out a little bit in the full production sample, but something which caught my eye and makes it maybe less completely usable at 10mm than I probably would otherwise have liked. I think it's probably also more noticeable in the conditions I was shooting in, so lower light, sunset, shooting towards the sun. Probably didn't help that situation, but again, like I say, worth being aware of it. Actually, in the lens itself, there are 3 UD and 1 super UD elements, which help to do things like reduce chromatic aberration throughout the zoom range. We've also got things like advanced lens coating to minimize ghosting and flare. And there's a new STM motor here as well, with position sensor for faster startup, which means the autofocus is nice and quick, it's nice and snappy. Not something that I ever thought about while I was shooting, because it just worked constantly. It just worked every time, never an issue. No hunting. I mean, I think those days are kind of a bit behind us now, but nothing like that. I never even thought about it until I came to put my thoughts down for this video. And then I sort of thought, yeah, the autofocus was basically flawless. So not as much of a challenge on a wide angle lens as it is on a telephoto, you know, tracking a bird in flight, but still great to know that it worked really well. You've obviously got that constant f4 aperture throughout the zoom range, which I think works really well. I think that's pretty much a perfect aperture to be using on a lens like this. I'm assuming that's part of how the lens is able to be a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter as well, rather than going for a brighter aperture. But I think f4 is fine. You know, cameras like the R5, for example, are perfectly capable of using higher ISO values without introducing loads and loads of noise. So I think for low light, that's fine. And with the image stabilization, which we'll talk about in a minute, in the lens, You can use a slower shutter speed for photos without really any problems at all. And I certainly did that as well, shooting past sort of sunset. And something which helps with that as well is actually the image stabilization in the lens. Now you've got 5 stops in the lens, 6 stops if you pair it with something like the R5, so an IBIS capable R camera, and you can really feel it when you're shooting. So photography, like I say, a slower shutter speed is totally possible. And then video, handheld video is very, very doable with a lens like this. It's great actually because the combination of it being so wide and having image stabilization means you could absolutely do handheld shots with this, walking shots, so you've got establishing shots, tracking shots, loads of stuff. This is not just a photography lens. This is going to be great for videographers to get all kinds of different shots. That's really, really handy. It makes this very multi-purpose, very versatile. Now let's talk a little bit about the build and the design of this lens. I've probably mentioned a dozen times already in this video. This is smaller, it's lightweight, it fits really well on the front of a camera like the R5, it's lovely in the hands, but there's lots of nice little touches to this which I think are really nice. Now, even though it is a relatively small lens, you've still got a really nice feel to things like the controls. So for example, on the lens itself, the zoom ring is weighted very nicely. It's got this little bump on it, so if you do have the lens up to your eye, it's very easy to feel just from the tactile feel of it where the actual zoom ring is and be able to adjust it. Same goes for the actual manual focus ring as well, which is very nicely weighted, and you've got full-time manual focus as well. So you can make those micro adjustments even when you're in the autofocus mode, which is a nice touch. It's a really, really nice touch. And then of course you've got the control ring at the front, which I've got to say I love, not just on this lens, but on an RF lens like this, I love that control ring. You want to set it as an aperture ring? You go ahead. You want to set it as an ISO control? Absolutely no problem. Really big fan of that. Now in terms of the other controls, it's fairly straightforward. You've got the AF/MF switch, image stabilization on/off switch, and then the custom function button as well, which you can set to different things. Probably focus hold is the most kind of usual one to set it to, but you can set it to different things as well. Otherwise, it just feels really good. There's also a rear filter holder, which makes it easy to use things like gelatine filters when you're out shooting as well. Ultimately though, if you're looking for a very high quality, super wide angle zoom lens, this has got to be near the top of your list because I mean, the optical quality is fantastic, as you'd expect on an L lens. The build quality is really nice. It's very portable and just, it's very easy to go out and about with this. So whether you shoot landscape, like I say, architecture, interiors, there's a lot to love about this. And of course, on the video side as well, whether you are just a videographer or whether you like to do both photography and video, there's so much versatility from a lens like this. It's not the cheapest lens out there, and you can check out the full price by following the link down in the description, but this really is a very, very high quality lens with a lot of different use cases. Now, like I say, check out the lens for yourself by following that link down in the description, full pricing, full spec, everything you want to know that we haven't gone over in this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because there's new content all the time. I will see you in the next video, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.